Hello, everyone. I'm David Younger,
Hi, I'm Elvin Aydın-Keles.
and we created Chronic Illness Therapy to provide support and resources for people living with chronic health conditions. Today, we're going to talk about a really important topic, which is the impact of having a chronic illness on a romantic relationship and on the family, and all the things that come up that are so difficult to talk about, to navigate it, and it becomes the elephant in the room. This weekend, Deb, my wife, and I had this talk where she was telling me about a conversation she had with a friend, just about the impact of the muscular dystrophy that I have on her, on the
On her life.
relationship,
Mm-hmm.
on her life, and how it's so different from
Mm-hmm.
what she thought it would be when we first got together. Because none of us, neither of us, could have imagined
Sure.
and didn't imagine it would be this difficult this soon. Like she thought, well, maybe we were in our 60s or 70s,
Mm-hmm.
but not in our early 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And when I hear that, it's so hard because, number one, my heart breaks. Like, I feel so bad for her, and it's something I can't do anything about. So there's a helplessness that I feel, and then it's so easy, and I could really see it happening. I go from that extreme vulnerability to getting angry
Mm-hmm.
and telling her, well, your life is so good in all these other respects. And often, it's so easy for it to go so quickly from that vulnerability into the anger that we end up getting into a fight. And she was brilliant this time in the sense that she could see that. So instead of just responding to my anger, she said, I know that your heart breaks when you hear me say this. And for me, that just allowed me to take it, to step out of that sort of reacting mode, and to say yes. My heart breaks when you say this, and it's helpless. And for her, she says she feels like she's in a relationship with, it's me, her, and the muscular dystrophy.
Yeah.
And what I say is that the muscular dystrophy is a part of me. So it doesn't feel like it's me, her, and the muscular dystrophy. It feels like me and her, and the muscular dystrophy is a part of me. So this is what I'm bringing to the table, and I don't see it as this sort of outside force. And I think that's a really powerful and important difference.
Yes, but also I love that you were able to talk about this. You and Debbie, and kudos to Debbie as well. It's so hard to bring something like this up. It's so much easier to keep it secretive, like other people do mostly. And what a strength to bring this up with you, to really show you that she doesn't pity you or she doesn't see you as less than, and really confront you with her feelings. Not really confront, but share her feelings with you. And you and her being able to come out of this collusion, really, and to be able to go up into a reflective mode and being able to talk. Oh my God, really, I got goosebumps. It's amazing.
Thank you. I mean, but it's like a dance, in the sense that there are times when, like that, when we were able to sort of go into that reflective mode. There have been so many times over, the 17 years that we've been together, where we're in survival mode. And I feel so threatened to the core so I don't want to make it seem like, oh, look what we were able to do. This is the way it is all the time. Because it's such a deep struggle. And so it's for me, it's the most threatening, most vulnerable that I can feel, because it's utterly helpless. Like, there's nothing I can do about it. Like, I didn't choose to have the muscular dystrophy. I didn't choose for these things to happen. I'm taking better care of myself than I ever have in my entire life in all respects. So I'm not neglecting my health.
I really hear what you're saying, how vulnerable you felt. And I think it's really important to say, I'm pretty sure anyone with a life-threatening chronic disease or just chronic disease feels like that when they are in a romantic relationship. Worse if they're not in a romantic relationship, I have to say.
What do
You
you
know,
mean? What do you mean by
when
that?
okay, when you have to do the dance from the beginning to find a romantic partner, imagine the pressure put by the media, everything, like just to look or be perfect, and how damaging it is to regularly healthy people, and how difficult it must be for someone who's dealing with an illness alongside of their lives, you know, and trying to find a partner and to show their vulnerability. First of all, our emotional vulnerability is very high when we're flirting with someone in the beginning. It's so difficult to accept that closeness without being terrified that we're going to get heartbroken again. It's such a difficult dance. And on top of it, having such disease and trying to establish a strong union is so difficult. And what you and Debbie doing, I remember when you first married. I remember you got married within 3 months, weren't you? And you were so in love.
Mm-hmm.
You guys were so in love. And I remember you being not that affected by muscular dystrophy at the time. You just told me that you have this disease, and I had no idea what it entailed. And then I saw what you went through to have healthy babies and how difficult that was. And then, you know, you're saying that your health got much worse before, you know, way before that you have imagined it would be. And what kind of a pressure that puts on people's lives, you know, sexuality, closeness, intimacy, joy, and just daily life, really. You know, so many difficult things to talk about. And I always want to say, relationships are not what I thought they would be. We have such a fake image of relationships imposed on us by media, again, by movies. They are so not perfect and so imperfect, I have to say. And the way we are raised, it's so difficult to accept, to commit to that imperfection, thinking this is the best thing for me. It makes you question so many things, and yet you find the best moments when you commit in that imperfection. That's in my view.
I love that about I call, like, when I'm talking to clients, I talk about leaning into the struggle, leaning into the pain or the sadness, because it's so easy to have these reflexive responses to just sort of say, well, it shouldn't be this way, or I've got to get rid of this. And
Yes, that need to get rid of something, right? When something is not the way you thought it would be, or something is difficult, heavy in the relationship. It's a bit like the jerking reflex when you do yoga. You know how the teacher would say, just breathe through the pain and try to do the, you know, just bend down, for example, bending down, something simple. But then your back hurts so much, you feel like you want to jerk back up. And it's, to me, it's such a good metaphor for how life feels when you're in a relationship, and what the other person is or does is so intolerable for you, for your expectations and fantasies. I have this friend who's a semi-therapist. She's in the organizational field. So that I met her through a training. And she shared with us in the group that that her husband voted for Brexit, and that put a huge wedge between them. She could not believe that he did that. For her, it was just a deal breaker. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I told her. You know, sometimes we find the deepest closeness through such unsurmountable differences and, you know, difficulties and things that life puts in front of us. And she took that to heart, and they have really found a way to connect very deeply in therapy
Right.
through that.
I mean, dealing with difference, in part, it's about dealing with difference and how challenging that can be in the couple, how threatening it can
Yes,
be.
yes.
'Cause it kind of shatters the illusion of oneness.
I
Um,
Yes, and yes, very good point. And I find that people fall in love with each other very easily when they're each other's perfect reflection, naturally. But I find health very similar to culture, and that how deal breaking those cultural differences can be for some people, and how enriching they can be for others. I think what type of health condition you have is almost similar to what kind of a culture you come from and what you bring with you as a baggage,
mm.
right? So I think it helps to think in those terms, like difference. I love that. It's a difference.
And certainly it's similar in terms of the difference. I think the big difference though between health and cultural differences is just the ways that the health, having a chronic illness impacts the day-to-day life and all these mundane things that, most people don't even think about. That when you have a chronic illness and when you're in a relationship and or you have kids and a family with a chronic illness, that they just play into the dynamic on on a on a daily, hourly, but like there's no escape.
Yeah, you're very true. And those, I mean, I still think that with culture, you have, imagine a Christian woman, a white Westernized woman, being married to a Muslim man uh, from Middle East. I mean, the kind of differences that will stand out there would be also similar, almost um, debilitating in many times. But it's not the same thing as looking at progression, with the anxiety of living with the disease and so many other complexities that come with it. And I think when you mention children, you're talking also about different roles. Like, I remember your profound article about being a dad and having to take your wheelchair with you, and how your son feels about, I mean, that really touched me deeply, that article. And how poignant that was, how important that is. You just want your son to be proud of you, and yet it brings all these ambivalent feelings. Having a dad in a wheelchair at times, it's so complex.
Yes. And one of the things that forced me to do, and that I continue to have to do, and it's another major struggle, is I have to deal with my own shame and not expect him to deal with it for me. So if I'm not dealing with and processing my own shame, of course, he's going to get this, he's going to be dealing with this sort of unprocessed, undealt with shame, and on top of his own feelings.
That's amazing. It's such a high level of awareness, and I think it's so important for people who are listening to us to hear this. It's such a difficult thing to get over, and often the way I conceptualize shame is something that prevents us being fully in a relationship. It's almost like a defense from being hurt by the other. When there's shame, we don't really fully lean in to the relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing is doing exactly that, leaning fully in with all the shaming aspects that may come from it. And I think that is such an amazing capacity. And I really commend you for that. And I really hope that people who are going through similar phases can hear you.
And again, I want to sort of to say, I think it's important to say that it's something I struggle with all the time. So there are many times that I end up withdrawing and protecting myself.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, the shame is a part of that, and just feeling like I don't want to make the effort to to put myself out there, to go to some place in the wheelchair, or especially if it's something that Eric, my son, feels anxious about. So again, it's a dance. It's something that it's ongoing. It's there, highs and lows and in betweens.
So you have a teenager son,
Mhm.
and do you have any tips for people who have children that helped you in the communication?
Well, I think the most important thing is to make the space to talk about it, and to be open and honest and not defensive. Or it's again, it's actually similar to the conversation with my wife about her feelings, is that if I jump in and try and sort of convince him why he shouldn't feel a certain way, that's obviously not going to help him to open up and for us to have a discussion, and to make room for the feelings. And it's not something that's just going to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So he basically will say, my fear, my anxiety is that people are going to meet me for the first time and see me as the kid who has the father with the disability. That's how I'm going to be known to them and labeled in their mind. And um, he doesn't want that. That's not how he wants to be known. And so it would be easy for me to jump in and say, no, that's not true. People are going to get to know you for you, and try to convince them otherwise. But what I need to do in those moments is number one, related to my own experience of growing up and having a mother with muscular dystrophy. Now, my son doesn't have muscular dystrophy, so it's a big difference. But I felt a lot of shame, and I did things to hide it from other people. So I can understand where, his point of view, and then to let him know that I understand, um, but not in a magnanimous way, not in a way that I'm not human. I can, let him know it's hard for me.
Yeah,
It's hard for me to know that, to sit with it, but how important it is that we're talking about it.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is an amazing talk that we had. If you have any questions and concerns about these subjects, please write to us. You can send email to us through our website, which you can find on chronicillnesstherapy.com, or share this video. I think it's so important that people can talk about what they're going through. It's so liberating, and we would love
Absolutely.
to hear from you. Yeah.
We would love to hear questions, shared experiences, even if you have things that you would love for us to talk about. We would love to hear it. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.